And I'm going to show you where those recordings are in just a bit. But let me introduce myself properly. Let me turn on my camera so you can put a face to a name. As I usually tell my students, if you see this guy begging off the highway 10 years from now, please give generously. But my name is John Meredith. I am your instructor here. I am with Sumo. I'm an employee of Sumo, based out of my home here in Bedford, New Hampshire. So that's where I live. We are currently undergoing a major kitchen renovation, but there's not going to be a lot of work done today, so shouldn't hear any background noise. But I've been with Sumo 2 years. Also have worked as an IT manager, a DBA, a programmer, a network admin, et cetera, et cetera. This is something that I absolutely enjoy doing, and that is teaching. So I always try to find a job. Lately in my career, as my career winds down, I've been trying to do jobs that I really love, like teach. So that's probably more about me than you wanted to know. Anyway, I'm also assisted by my friend Odell. Odell, you want to say hi?
Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone, and also welcome. I'm a new Sumo Logic trainer here. I'm based out of the suburbs of Chicago. I've been in IT for about 30 years doing similar jobs as John, database administration, DevOps, trainer as well. John knows so much, so hopefully you'll soak up all his information, ask questions because we'll answer them for you. Good luck and enjoy the class. Thanks, John.
Thank you, sir. Couple things, just a couple of administrative items, if you will. Number one, this class is going to be repeated later today. So if you have classmates or work colleagues and stuff like that, and you think this class is valuable to them, just so you know, we are running another session at 7 p.m., 7 to 10 p.m. East Coast time. So just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. Also, tomorrow, we will be running the Cloud SIM Fundamentals class this same time, and also at 7 to 10 p.m. East Coast time. And then on Thursday, we're going to run the Cloud SIM Administration class. So for those of you familiar with our Cloud SIM product and you want to learn how to administer it and take care of it and stuff like that, that's on Thursday, again, the same time as this class, as well as the second session is from 7 to 10 p.m. So just wanted to make you aware of those things. Now, the only ask that I have of you is if you got a question, please ask it, okay? When you ask a question, not only do you get the answer to your question, but you actually help us out, the instructors, by asking your question. We understand what's important to you. So that's a win for us. And then, of course, your question also gets some of your classmates to think about, oh, that's a good question. I wanted to ask something related to it. So appreciate the questions, can't encourage them enough. So please feel free to do that. I'm going to stop my video sharing here for a second just to save a little bandwidth, and off to the races we go. What is our game plan for today? Well, we're going to talk about collectors. We're going to actually go through a few slides, so don't get excited here about downloading these files. We'll get to that. It's not a big deal. But we're going to talk about collectors. We're going to talk about sources. And then we're going to do some hands-on labs where we're going to set up some collectors, labs, and sources, okay? And then we are going to talk about optimization. And then we're going to talk about how we set up optimization. Then we're going to talk about administrative things like creating users, creating roles, things like that, the various settings under the admin section in Sumo Logic. Some of that with your account that we're going to give you, you'll have the ability to see. Some of that you won't. We're just trying to protect ourselves a little bit. And then we're going to do labs 4 and 6. Now, you might say, well, what happened to 5? I'll get there in a second. But labs 4 is all about installing some apps and some applications that I think you're going to find helpful. If you're an administrator of your Sumo Logic environment, there's a data volume app, and there's also a what your users are doing inside Sumo that might become very, very valuable to you. And that's what we do in lab 4. We show you how to set that up. An auditing app is what it's called. And then in lab 6, we're going to create a data ingestion alert in case there is a problem. So you can adjust this alert so as you ingest data, because we charge by data, we charge by how much you ingest. And therefore, if you start getting close to how much you're supposed to ingest, you can get an alert and be proactive and all that good stuff, okay? Ryan asked an excellent question. Is there a scheduled break? Yes, Ryan, there is. Scheduled is probably a loose word. I will say that I will try to take a break in about an hour. Okay, so we're going to have lecture lab for an hour, take a break, another lecture lab for the rest of the next hour, and then the last hour, as you can see down here, we're going to give you time to take the certification exam. So that's our game plan as far as taking the certification exam. But I'll typically try to do the break here in about an hour or so. So no, it's a great question. So just wanted to give you a heads up. The problem is I can't pick the moment I'm going to do it. So it'll be as we get to a good stopping point, probably after lab 2 or 3, but we'll see. Okay. One other thing with regards to the certification exam, right? If you take the certification exam today and you pass it, and I'm confident that you will. And by the way, Odell and I will be here to help proctor that exam. So if you get stuck on a question, we're here to answer the question. But you can send a copy of your certificate, and we'll show you how to do that, to training-promotions@sumologic.com. And we will send you a $15 Uber Eats voucher. Now, this could take 48 hours or so to get the voucher, because there's only one person doing this, and they do it for all of our courses. And they're going to be a very busy person over today, with all of you attending and another sessions attending and stuff like that. So it takes them a little bit of time. Okay, it's a manual process. But again, I want to take advantage of that offer. And the old adage of who says there's no such thing as a free lunch? Well, sounds like a free lunch to me. So let's talk about Sumo Logic and high-level data flow and basically how things work. Sumo Logic, and if you've had any other courses or fundamentals course or search mastery course, you've seen this diagram before. In Sumo Logic, what we have is we have a data collection phase. And we're going to talk about this in great nauseam today, because today we're going to set up the collectors. We're going to set up the sources. The collectors are nothing more than a lightweight Java app or some sort of an app that is going to compress, encrypt, and send your data to the Sumo Logic cloud. That's what it does. Think of it as the highway under which your data is going to run. That collector is not going to take up much resource. It's going to take up less than 1% of your CPU, less than 1% of your memory. So it's not going to be a big load drain at all. And then underneath that collector, you're going to have a series of sources. These are the various logs, metrics, and other things that you want to bring into Sumo Logic so that you can then run queries and do things with that data. Okay. So if you want to bring in your sources of all your Windows event logs, you can certainly do that. If you're on the cloud and you want to bring in your AES3 buckets and your CloudTrail logs, and all, you certainly can. You want to bring in your metrics for your cloud environment, you certainly can. And so, again, that's part of the data collection phase. And we'll get into that in a bit more detail. Then once you get data into Sumo, then we can search and analyze. We can start using various operators, various things, build charts, bar charts, line charts, map charts, whatever. And then we can take those charts and we can then generate dashboards. So we create a query which generates a chart or a map chart or something, and we build that and send that out to a dashboard. And we can take several of those and put those in our dashboard, several different visualizations. We can also create alerts. Now, as far as learning, search, and analyzing and visualizing and monitoring, that we really do in our search mastery class and in our fundamentals class. That's where the focus is on items 2 and 3 here. Our focus in this class is really going to be on data collection. So if you want to learn more about querying, the operators, the alerts, stuff like that, probably want to check out some other courses. Okay. But the journey to the collection of 10,000 logs begins with a single collector. So step 1, getting data into our Sumo Logic environment, you're going to find we're going to use these collectors. There are 2 types of collectors. There's an installed collector, which, like I said, is a little lightweight Java-based application, or there's a hosted collector. And if you're on the cloud, or if you're dealing with a cloud environment, you will use a hosted collector. Okay, it's already out there. It's maintained by us. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to install anything. Very, very easy. Okay, and we'll talk about these and see these firsthand in just a little bit. Then once we get our collection process set up, then we run our log search or metric searches or whatever, create our queries. We can also install a bunch of built-in applications if you want. So we've got a bunch of pre-built dashboards with panels and information that you can install and take advantage of this data that you have coming into Sumo Logic. They're pre-built. The best kind of query in my mind, for those of you who are programmers, could probably relate to this, the best kind of program to create is one you don't have to type, one that's already created for you. Well, same sort of thing with our applications. We've got some pre-built apps that probably will get you 70 to 90% of where you need to be. And then you've got to make some minor adjustments to them to get that last 10 to 30%. And then, of course, after that, we can talk about these dashboards. We can see and visualize. Again, in this particular dashboard here at the bottom, these are individual panels which are represented by individual queries that you can take advantage of. And as I mentioned before, above this is our app catalog, where we've got lots and lots of different applications, up to about 200 applications that you can install right out of the box, dealing with all kinds of things, not to mention Zoom. Since we're all on a Zoom call right now, we have an application for Zoom. We've got applications for a wide variety of things, and you'll see some of those from an administrator's perspective today. We'll talk about that. So those are the 3 steps, and that's basically how we get in here. Now, the question is, what sort of data collection strategy do you want to use? Do you want to bring it all in, or what? Keep in mind that we charge by ingestion, okay? The more you ingest, the more you pay. So just want you to be cognizant of that. We don't charge you for how many queries you run. We don't charge you for how many applications you install. The only we charge you for is ingestion, okay? As I said, this journey starts with collectors. If you think about this, looks like a very busy chart, but if you think about it, there are 2. Just checking something real quick here. Sorry about that. Go back. There we go. There's 2 diagrams here. On the right side, there's the hosted collectors. So if you're in AWS or Azure or Google Cloud Platform, we already have those collectors available to you. You don't have to install anything. And I'll show you how to set up a hosted collector and how easy that is, okay? But basically you define your hosted collector. If you aren't on the cloud, if you're on prem equipment, if you're on physical machines, or if you're trying to grab a bunch of stuff from your clients, then you can use installed collectors. And as I said, these are little lightweight Java-based applications that install on Windows, they install on Unix, they install on Linux, and they install on Mac machines. So you can install them on every machine that you want. And by the way, you can also do this silently through our APIs, our application programming interfaces. So you can do a silent install to make it easy. And then also, besides installing these collectors, I assume you're going to want to install a source, maybe your Windows event logs or some various log systems on these systems. So you can install them in each and every one of these machines, or you could also install a consolidated installed collector where you're installing it on one machine, and then you're going to have these machines for their logs to this machine. And again, our collector compresses, encrypts, and sends through your firewalls or whatever to the Sumo Logic cloud. So that's basically how this process works. So you can, again, use a installed collector on every machine, or you can use a consolidated installed collector and then forward these machines, have them forward their logs to your various Sumo Logic environment. So it's up to you. Again, comparing the collectors, the installed versus the hosted. Installed collector has to be installed on a computer, okay? It can either be done locally or you can do it remotely through APIs. Then you're also going to define your sources. What sources of data do you want? You'll find that when we look at our installed collector, we're going to have some collector logs and some other things that you and I can use to troubleshoot, and our support team can use to troubleshoot if you have problems with its collectors. Our hosted collector is hosted by Sumo Logic. There's nothing that has to be installed. These hosted collectors work seamlessly with AWS, Google, Microsoft products, cloud-based products, and they can receive logs and metrics uploaded via a URL. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. So the question is, how many collectors do you need, right? Well, it depends on what you're going to do, right? If you want to install a collector on a dedicated machine, that's great because you're running a very high bandwidth network. You have high logging levels. So if you're doing a lot of logging on a machine, you probably want to install that collector on a dedicated machine, okay? But you can, if you want to have more than one installed collector, in other words, you want to install them on whatever, here's some of the breakouts. So if a collector is expected to ingest greater than 500 separate files, you cannot necessarily use a consolidated installed collector. There, you're going to want to have more than one collector installed. Okay, you want to keep the values under 500 separate files. Okay, so they have memory or CPU limitations, right? If your current installed collector, your consolidated installed collector has, it's already doing other things and it's got memory and CPU limitations, probably not a good idea to have one single consolidated installed collector. Also, if your environment and of course, your corporate environment is spread out across various forms of geography, it probably makes sense to have an installed collector in each of those points of geography, right? Rather than trying to go across a wide area network. And then, of course, the other thing too here is expected combined logging traffic for a collector greater to be 15,000 events per second. So if you're expecting to log over 15,000 events per second in your logs, metrics, whatever, then you probably want to have more than one collector. So this is as far as your installed collectors go. Do I want a consolidated installed collector, or do I want a non-consolidated where I can install more than one collector? So again, here's our consolidated installed collector where we have one machine stood up to connect, encrypt, compress, and send to Sumo Logic. These machines will simply forward their logs, their metrics and stuff to this machine. It will encrypt it, compress it, and send it. Now, or as I said, you can have separate collectors, which will, of course, each of these collectors separately will encrypt, compress, and send. So it just depends on how you want to do it. And then, of course, we'll talk about hosted here in just a second. In fact, let's talk about hosted right now. So if you're on the cloud in a cloud environment doing not only cloud systems like AWS or Azure, but if you're on cloud environments like any software as a service like Salesforce or Zoom or things like that, the software as a service, you can use this cloud data collection. Again, you'll use a hosted collector. It's maintained by us. There's nothing you have to install. And you can grab that data that you want. So you can grab your S3 buckets. You can grab data through HTTPS, right? Through one login, through Lambda scripts, all that good stuff. You can grab stuff through Office 365 or Google Suite. You can grab things through your authentication providers like Okta, Duo, and things like that that are on the cloud. Of course, Google Cloud Platform, Azure, things like that. Benefits, and this is a test question. It's hosted by Sumo Logic. There's no software you have to install. It is agentless. You don't have to worry about this. So if you're on the cloud, you probably want to take advantage of this, pure and simple. Now, if you're not on the cloud, that means you're going to do one of two configurations. You're either going to have a local installed collector on each and every machine, or you're going to have a consolidated installed collector. Now, this is dealing with a local collector on each and every machine. So if you want to grab your Windows operating system files, your event logs, you're dealing with Docker or some sort of syslog environment, you could grab all those various things. This requires no additional hardware. You're just going to go ahead and install the collector on an existing computer that hosts these logs. So there's no extra hardware that's required, right? It's very easy to troubleshoot. It does require these machines to have outbound internet access so they can get to Sumo Logic and bring the logs there. Okay, it is going to require you to install our collector, and we're going to do an exercise with that in just a little bit so you can see how that works. And it's typically going to take about 1% of your CPU memory and 1% of your CPU utilization and about 1% of your memory. So it's not a big drain. I see there's a couple of questions. I'll deal with those in a second. And so here is typically a scenario that you might have. So somebody asked, will we be sharing the slides for this presentation? Yes, we will. And I'll also tell you where you can find a recording of this presentation. So yep, we're going to get to that in just a little bit. Finally, here's that centralized installed data collector. So in the centralized installed data collector, what we are going to ask you to do is to grab a dedicated box. Grab a dedicated box, a dedicated resource, dedicated hardware that you're going to use. And the nice thing about the centralized data collection is it is going to require dedicated hardware because that's going to be this box's job. The bad news is, or the good news is that it doesn't require any inbound, outbound internet access on those machines. So let me go back here to a diagram. Again, these machines may not have access to the internet, but this machine does. And so these machines can forward their logs to this machine. This has access to the internet, and then it can send it to the Sumo Logic cloud. Okay. That's what we're trying to say. I'm sorry, I'm going the wrong way here. Okay. So the other problem, the drawback here, just so you know, is that there's no complexity. Now, if you install it on some sort of a, cluster or something like that, then obviously you can have complexity. You can have failover and all that sort of thing. But if you don't have it on a cluster, and I imagine to avoid cost you wouldn't, that if that machine goes down, then you're not going to be getting logs for a little bit until you get it fixed. So you will want to know from the test purposes the difference between these three configurations, the pluses and the minuses. Okay. Now let's clean up some things. Somebody had a question. CJ, did you have your hand up? Is there a question, sir?
No, sorry about that. I accidentally pressed it on my phone here.
No worries. Daniel, you have a question, sir.
Yeah. What about the access, the service account? Do I have to have an admin account to access all the other machines if I do centralize it?
Right. That's a great question. And to answer your question, if you're on the cloud, you're going to use whatever account has access to those logs and that sort of thing. For on-prem equipment, you can create a system attendant type account, or you can use the admin accounts. And so when we actually go through and install a collector, we'll point out where that setting is, so you can control that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Good. Thank you for asking. Any other questions, folks? Somebody else has their hand up. Prasanna, what's up? Question?
Hey, hi, John. So my question is, so if I have to send my logs from, let's say, from using a subscription filter, so how do I get the access to the endpoint for the, to share the data to Sumo Logic?
So how do you connect to Sumo Logic? It's actually built into our collectors. So you don't have to worry about that. Now, if you want to reroute it in a different way, because you're using APIs or something, there is a way to do that, way to control that. I'll show you that as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. Again, folks, some real good questions. Keep them coming. Now, typically when people think of Sumo Logic, they think of logs. That's what we're known for. But we're also known for collecting metrics. And we'll take metrics in one of three formats. We'll take them in Carbon 2.0, which is a dotted notation. We'll take them in Graphite. We'll take them in Prometheus format. So we can not only ingest logs, but we can also ingest metrics. And you'll find that we'll have an exercise later today to bring in metrics. So again, whether I'm on a host or doing Kubernetes information or Azure or AWS, I can bring in the CloudWatch metrics, the Azure monitoring metrics, and all that sort of thing. So we can ingest that stuff and create metric queries to take advantage of those as well. Additionally, we also have the ability to convert formats. So if we need to convert out of Carbon 2.0 into Graphite or whatever, we can certainly do that as well to make it easy for us to ingest those things. And I will say, we get more into that in the metric mastery class, not in here, but in the metric mastery class. If anybody's dying to know, we can talk about it. Speaking of metrics, let's talk about metric ingestion and retention. Okay. In fact, let's talk about something even more important. As I said, at Sumo Logic, you get charged by how much you ingest. That's how we make our money. That's how we do things. And the point is that also when you work with us and you say, okay, there's so much data I'm going to ingest, we give you a certain number of DPMs. That's data points per minute, DPMs. And basically what those are metrics. And what happens in a lot of cases, and a lot of our customers is, quite frankly, they don't use their allocated DPMs. They don't. And so you may want to, if you're a Sumo customer, check and see, and I can show you how you can see the DPMs. But if you're not using them, then you can obviously bring in more metrics. We're not going to charge you anymore. So take advantage of that. One thing we don't do is we do not ingest metric data that's more than 1 week old. We don't do that. So we try to bring in old metric data, we're not going to take it. We're just going to flush it right out. As far as metric retention, when we bring in the metrics, and you can do it every, 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 3 seconds, whatever, we ingest that data for raw data for 7 days. Now, as we ingest that raw data at 1 minute and 1 hour resolutions, we will automatically calculate the min, the max, the average, the sum, and the count at 1 minute and 1 hour intervals. They will take the 1 minute aggregated tables, if you will, and we'll retain those for 30 days. And we'll take the 1 hour tables and we'll retain that for 13 months, which means that if you're looking back at metric performance over the last year, you can look at it within an hour resolution. If you're looking over the last 30 days, you can look at it within a minute resolution. And if you're looking over the last 7 days, you can look at that specific data point to see what's going on. And that is our metric retention policy. Yeah. Questions? Let's move on to metadata design. Metadata, as you hopefully all know, is not a Sumo Logic term. It's an industry term, right? It's the information about your data. That's what metadata means. And you'll find that when we create our collectors, our sources, and things like that, we can reference them by the name _collector equals the name of the collector we just installed, _source, the name of the source that we just installed. We can use those. But you'll notice on the slide, this one's bolded, which means it must be more important. So we have created a metadata tag called source category. And we recommend highly that you use this source category because you can break down the source category in such a way that you're breaking down the structure of your environment. I'll give you an example. Typically what happens when people create a source category metadata tag, they're going to have their major component / subassembly / further subassembly in there. And they could break this down however they want to within their organization. So for example, you might have a prod environment. You might have a dev environment. You might have a QA environment. So that first tag could be prod or dev or QA. And then underneath that, the specific apps, maybe it's your authentication apps, maybe it's your email apps, maybe it's your database apps, / and then what database, MySQL or whatever, / my access logs or whatever. So you can break up from a large subassembly down to a very minor subassembly and create a path for that structure. Now, some people, like I said, do it by environments. Most popular way they do it, prod, dev, UAT, whatever. Some people decide they want to break it down by application. That's fine. By geographic information, maybe they're located by different regions, right? Different offices, things like that. Or if you're on AWS, maybe AWS regions, or by business unit. So we can create these source categories when we define our sources, and we will follow our best practice. Now, the other advantage of source category is these things right here. And again, they make a great test question. So here, when you use this source category, you can define the scope of your searches. So here I'm looking at all my networking devices, all my firewall devices, /* means I want to see all my firewall data, all my logs from all my different firewalls, my Cisco firewalls, my various other firewalls. I want to see that. So you can define this in your scope of searching. And those of you who've had our various classes, search mastery and stuff, we use source category a great deal. Now, what most people don't know, unless they're administrators, is we can also use this for partitioning your data. So we can, in order to prove performance, we can create partitions that says, look, I want all of my data from this stuff to go into this partition, making it much easier and faster for me to search. It's one of the ways we can optimize. So you can use source category to index and partition your data. The other thing that, again, unless you're an administrator, you don't know, that is when we create roles in our product, you'll see this. When we create roles in our product, you can also define, based on who that role is, what data that they can see or what data they're restricted to. For example, maybe I create a role for my accounting team, and I only want my accounting team to see the finance data. I could say _source category equals, prod / finance / logs or whatever. And so that there's only they can see that information. That's all that they can see, by the way. So you can control who can see what data through these role-based access control. That's what RBAC stands for. Role-based access control. Sorry for the cough. All right. See, we got some questions here popping up. Okay. So somebody asks, which is better, partition to source category or source category partition? Source category is a way of identifying your data, so it has an advantage. Partition is going to be used to improve your performance. It's one of the ways you can use to improve performance. There's scheduled views, another way you can use performance. There's field extraction rules, and these are some of the things we'll talk about. So it's not a question of which is better. You use source categories to create your partition. So source category is a mechanism to create your partition. Okay. And so Ryan also says here, 95% of my searches start with underscore source category. Powerful stuff. And I'm glad that's working for you, Ryan. I really am. So yeah, I think source category is a pretty powerful thing. So it's a way for you to organize your data, so making your queries more easier and more efficient. So thank you for that. One other thing in this slide, there is a link that goes to our documentation, and it talks about good source categories, bad source categories. So it has a recommendation here, a little micro lesson on how to set your source category values, what might make sense, and what you can do with this. This is part of our documentation, and you'll find on the slide, you can actually click that link and see that information. So, any questions about source categories? All right. Well, I have prattled on here long enough. So what do you say we start getting some labs? So in this first set of labs that we're going to do, lab 1, 2, and 3, first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up a collector. Now we're going to set up a collector on your computer. So if you don't have the rights to install software on your computer, you're probably not going to be able to do this lab, okay? Or if you don't want to, you're probably not going to want to do this lab, but you can watch me because I'm going to do it on my machine and that sort of thing. So in lab 1, we're going to set up a collector. Then in lab 2, we're going to bring in some logs. We're going to bring in some log data. I've got a text file that we're going to read. We're going to put it someplace on our computer, and we're going to be able to ingest that log. We're going to create a source. So the lab 2, we're going to create a source for our log data. Lab 3, we're going to create another source. This is going to be a metric source. So we're going to create this information and be able to see that information in our Sumo Logic environment. So that's what we're going to do in labs 1, 2, and 3. Any questions before we get into that? All right. So here's what I want you all to do. I want you to fire up Google Chrome or Firefox. Google Chrome or Firefox, and I'd like you to go to service.sumologic.com. So the URL you're going to go to is service.sumologic.com. And if you don't mind, the second thing I want you to do is I want you to pick a 3-digit number from 001 to 999, and I'd like you to put it in the chat box. I don't care what number you pick. For example, I was on the USS Cushing and Spruance class destroyer for many years. The whole number was 985. Maybe I'll grab 985, right? Somebody's always wanted to be James Bond. Maybe someone wants to grab 007. Folks, I'll be right back. Give me a second here. Max, it's okay. Max, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Okay. It's okay. I'll go on that and then. I'm not sure if you can go that route or if you might go that one. You got you guys got to decide. Okay, there you go. You got it. All right, thank you. Oops. Right, thank you guys. Yeah, no problem. Thanks. I'm teaching the class, so I'll have it. I'm gonna go back to work. Max, come on, Max. Come on, Max. Come on. Sorry about that, folks. The home remodeling folks came in to do a little work. So anyway, Yeah, I'll introduce the dog here in a second, by the way, when I get him close here. The dog you hear barking, of course, is mine. So I'll introduce him in a second. So as I said, I want you to pick a 3-digit number. So you're going to go to, bear with me a minute, service.sumologic.com, and it's going to look something like this, right? And it wants you to log in. Only you're going to log in not with training analyst, those of you who had other classes. You're going to log in with training admin. So you're going to log in training plus ADMIN, that 3-digit number that you want. I'll grab 985 at sumologic.com. So it's got to be an email address. So it'll end with at sumologic.com. And then the password is capital FEB 2022 capital ADMIN exclamation mark. So the password looks like this. Please do not forget the exclamation mark. Okay, that is our current password. By the way, that password will change in about another 2 weeks. And if you need to know what the next password is, I don't know what it is yet, but when we change it, I will know. So if you're playing around here in 2 weeks and you want to be able to access this, you can send me an email and I will gladly help it out. Let me guess, March 2022 admin. Good guess, David, but I hope not. We don't want to be that predictable. We do have passwords for a reason. We do want to control the access here. So we don't want to be that predictable. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. Now, as I said, this account is different from a admin analyst account because it has different rights. So when I click sign in and you click sign in, you should be able to get in. Now, you may see a bunch of tabs open here and a bunch of other things. Just bear with us a bit and we'll show you how to clean that up. But I would like you to let me know if you're in. So if you're in, go ahead and put in the chat box that you're in, lots of tabs, all that stuff. Okay. If you do have lots of tabs up here, let me simulate that by opening up lots of tabs myself here. Skip. Okay. You can, if you got a bunch of tabs open here on any one of the tabs, you can click on this 3 dots, 3 vertical dots, and you'll see you have an option to close all tabs. So feel free to click close all tabs and you can close them all up. Now, if you're having problems logging in, we want to hear from you. So if you're having issues trying to log in, it says, you know, validate credentials or something like that, please let us know so we can get you all taken care of. But hopefully everybody's able to log in. By the way, if you are able to log in, if you just raise your hand, I would appreciate it. Raise your hand in the participants. That way I get a sense for how things are going for you. And just so you know, I've got about 6 hands up out of 49. So hopefully I suspect more people want to do things. Now, again, this is an opportunity for hands-on exercises. So we want to, give you that opportunity. We want you to play. We want you to kick the tires, as Odell would say, and, take a look under the hood and see what you got here. So we want to be as transparent as we possibly can. So is anybody else having issues? Okay. Okay. Miguel says unable to log in. Miguel, what kind of problems are you getting? Verified credentials or what's the issue here?
Credentials.
Okay.
I'm using the right username to log in as well as the password. So I'm not sure what's happening on.
Okay. Did you go to service.sumologic.com?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay. Hang on a second. Let me copy this. And you logged in as training plus admin. What 3-digit number did you use?
212.
That's not a 3-digit number. Put a 0 in front of that. So it's a 3-digit number. So if you want to log in as 012, that's fine. If you want to log in as 12, that's not a 3-digit number.
Logged in as 212.
212, sorry, I misheard. So you'll log a training plus admin 212 at sumologic.com is the email, correct?
Yep.
What's the password? What did you type in?
Feb 2022 admin exclamation.
Okay. And the admin is got a capital A on it.
Yep.
And the February's got a capital F on it, right?
Yep.
Huh, okay. let me do this. If you don't mind, I'd like to make you a presenter so I can see your screen so I can figure out what's going on here. So let me promote you to panelist, if you don't mind. And maybe we can share your screen.
Might be quicker to just try another user.
True, you could try a different user, that's true. But usually we get an account locked out. If there's a problem with the account, you get a message about account being locked out. So hopefully, sir, now if you could share your screen, Miguel. Hopefully we can, oh, I'm sorry, I gotta stop my sharing. Excuse me, sorry about that, my fault. Okay, I'll stop my screen. Somebody asked, can I currently share the account of the number of attendees? Sure, I'll do that in a second. All right, so training plus admin 985 at sumologic.com. February 2022. Go ahead and click the sign in button and see what happens here, sir. By the way, that looks like a screen capture. It doesn't look like a your real screen, but it does have the information I'm looking for. That should work.
Not a screen cap. This is my browser.
Is it?
Yeah,
Wow, interesting. What browser are you using?
Chrome. I even switched into incognito.
Okay, good. And when you click sign in, what happens?
So now the account I was using is locked out.
Okay,
So
985 is locked out. Let's try 603. Training plus admin 603 at sumologic.com. Let's try that. Okay. All right. There you go. That looks about right. Please verify your credentials. Okay, hold up a second. What is wrong with this picture? Training plus admin 603. Oh, com. Com is misspelled.
oh gosh.
There you go. There's always a reason for it. That's fine. Just got to find out what the reason is. There you go. You're in. You can stop sharing, sir. Thank you. There's always a reason. So sometimes, and don't get me wrong, I've made those kind of mistakes myself millions of times. So I get it. So, all right. Looks like we're all getting in. Anybody else having problems? Again, you pick up that 3-digit number yourself. So you pick your 3-digit number. By the way, somebody asked how many attendees we have. We have about 50 attendees. 50 students, 51 students to be more precise. So Miguel, I'm going to make you bring you back into a classmate there. So I'm moving you back over. And so that's basically that. Any questions so far? Anybody having problems getting in? I'm going to assume that we're all in that want to be in by now. Let me go ahead and lower all the hands. And now that we're here, let me give you a little guided tour. So let me give you a little guided tour, show you where the slides are, the recordings, and all that good stuff. So just bear with me a moment while I go out here and share my screen. There we go. So I'm logged in, you're logged in, life is good. Okay, again, if you got a bunch of tabs open up, on any one of those tabs, there's a 3 vertical dots. You click on those 3 vertical dots, you have an option to close all those tabs. Now, in here, of course, you got a home tab over here. Actually, let me back up. Over here where it says Sumo Logic, if you've got this hamburger menu, you can click on it. It will open this up. This is our navigation menu where we can see our shared library, our personal stuff that we have in our personal library, our favorites and all that good stuff. Down below here is our main menu, And then over here, like I said, is our home tab, and our home tab is broken up into 3 pages, our home page, our learn page, and our certification page. I'm going to show you, first of all, in the certification, okay. I just realized we have a fundamental problem. Okay, it's not you, it's me. I'll explain here in just a minute. I'm going to sign out for a second, and the way you sign out, I'm going to log in as me. So let me take a step back here and show you. Okay, down here, if you ever want to log out, Down here, you open your navigation panel, as I said before. Down here where your account is, you can click on it, you can sign out, okay? The reason I signed out is because we did something very interesting, and I guess I need to talk to my training, my certification manager about this. Normally, to see the slides and to see the information that you know, recordings and stuff like that, you would click on the House tab, you would click on certification, you would click on Get Certified. Now, the problem is when I do this logged in as me, I see these 4 tiles. You do not, okay? But you should see this recorded live training tile. This recorded live training tile. If you click on this recorded live training tile, you will see all of our classes, fundamentals, Cert Jam, so forth and so on, except you don't see this one. Okay, we'll have to fix that. Sorry, guys. I will provide you guys a copy of the slides and stuff like that. But normally you would go into
John,
this.
it looks like they're all there.
Is admin there?
Question. The observability fundamentals cert jam.
Right.
Which one?
See, I don't see the admin class here.
Oh, straight up. Okay, I'm sorry.
So I don't see our class. Normally we could click on one of these classes and there we could see a recording of the class, the slides, and the lab guide. But the admin class is not there. I've got to talk to somebody about that and get that fixed. Just making a note to myself. Okay. Now, I'm also going to take you someplace else and show you another place that you can get this information. All right. So I apologize for the confusion, but we are in the midst of moving from one location to another because the one location is kind of messing us up. If you and I go back into Sumo Logic, so we want to go back into Sumo Logic, we want to open up the navigation panel. So open up the navigation panel by clicking on the hamburger menu. Down here in your main menu, there is an option called Help. If you click on Help, underneath Help, there's a bunch of things like our documentation, our community, and stuff like that. If you click on Community, this will take you to our Sumo Logic community. And in our Sumo Logic community, if you search for the word slides, SLIDES, it will take you to this URL. Now give me a minute, I'll copy the links and post them in the chat. But this URL also has a link to all of our courses, the labs, a recording of this class, and slides. So let me take this particular URL, let me copy it, let me put it in the chat box, and I'm also going to explain to you why we are moving away from this. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to find the admin class. So as I scroll down here, the third class listed is the admin class. And if you and I go into the webinar, the slides, excuse me, go into the slides, you will see that we're showing the slides through something called SlideShare. And by the way, it's also complaining about this. I'm going to click away so that goes away. But it says here you can download now. Well, when we first put this on SlideShare, you could download now. You didn't have to sign in. You didn't have to get a subscription. You didn't have to do anything. Now, recently, they changed it so they have some sort of subscription model. So that's why we're moving them so you don't have to sign up for something. I will make the slides available to you. Actually, Odell, I'm going to ask you to render those slides as a PDF and post it up to the chat box. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, take the slides, render it as a PDF. If you need my help doing that, I can certainly help you out. But I want to make sure the slides are available to our class, okay? So that's the only problem with that. My apologies, folks, for that, and we're going to get that. Tamor, I'm sorry, Tamor, and I apologize, I mispronounced that, asked, are we going to get the recorded session in our email? I don't know. We do in some cases, we do, and we don't do in other cases. I don't know, but what you can do, Tamor, is you can send an email to training@sumologic.com and ask for a copy of this, okay? You can ask for a copy. Now, again, to tell you the truth, to be perfectly forthright, As I said, you can go to this link and you can go to this webinar recording and you can play this webinar recording. You can play it and visit it and all that stuff. It's also on our YouTube site. So if you go to YouTube and look for Sumo Logic, you'll find that course is there. So this is an older recording, but the information is still valid, still good. So I hope that answers your question, sir. And I hope I got the gender right too. Sorry. My apologies if I got it wrong. All right. So that's how we find, you can find the slides, you can get access to that stuff. One other thing I want to mention to you, back to Sumo Logic. Here in Sumo Logic, again, if I click on the Home tab icon, this time I click on the Learn tab. And here in the Learn tab, you'll see that we have our hands-on lab administration labs here. They're right there. And so we can very easily access those labs, and we're going to do that in just a minute. Okay. You'll also find that we got cheat sheets, a link to our documentation, link to support, a link to sign up for more training. All of that stuff is available here, as well as some micro lessons, right? A data collection strategy video, 15 minutes or 5 minutes. How to deal with Milton metadata, metadata and keywords. So all kinds of good little micro lessons here that take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. And they're also out on YouTube. So here is how we are going to get to our labs. In fact, I want you to go ahead and click on Lab 1, Install a Collector. And again, I'm going to take this URL and I'm going to copy it and put it in the chat box. There you go. Make it easy for you. And we're going to start doing this lab. So I want to start doing this lab, and then we'll probably take ourselves a break after we complete this lab. So any questions before we get started on this lab? Okay. Questions, CJ? Again, folks, don't need to raise your hands. Just go ahead and ask your questions.
Yeah, actually, for the folks that already have, like, say, like we already have administration to our, to our organizational Sumo Logic, would it be best to do it on, do these trainings on our account, or?
To be honest with you, I'd prefer that you use our environment for right now. And then if you want to redo these on your environment, you certainly can.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, we know the environment here. I don't know your environment. Now, that does bring up a good point and a good question. When we set up our collectors and our sources, it's going to take data and information from your computer and make it available into Sumo Logic. So we don't want you to, take this newfound knowledge that you all have, and we don't want you to have you set up a bunch of collectors in our training environment, right? If I, connect to your computer, your PC, your Mac, there's probably nothing on there as far as your logs that is catastrophic. But if you take one of your servers and you bring it in with your metric data, there might be proprietary data here. So we are going to show you an exercise to do here that shouldn't cause any concern. But as a rule, I definitely don't want you to bring your customer data into our training environment. Our training environment is very public. It faces the world here. And so we don't want to do that. We don't want you to do that. So if there's a concern, I would recommend you not do lab 1, 2, or 3 if you're worried about that. But hopefully there's nothing on your machine that would cause you any concern. Okay. And again, I'm going to do these labs myself so you can see firsthand what's going on. So any other questions? All right. So it says here, before you begin. So as I scroll down right under the picture, it says, before you begin, download this file. If you're on a PC, you should be able to right click and say save as and download it. Okay. If you're on a Mac like I am, you can right click on it and say save link as, and you can put this somewhere on your computer. Okay. I'm going to put it on my desktop, wherever you want, but you want to download that. Now, again, it's a very lightweight file, should download fairly quickly. And in my case, it's already downloaded. In our case, we want to install a collector. So the journey into this is we're going to install a collector. Where do we get that collector? We get it in Sumo Logic. So here we're going to go back to Sumo Logic. We're going to open up our navigation panel. We're going to go into our main menu, specifically under the phrase manage data. So under manage data, there is a collection subassembly. So the submenu in here. If you click on manage data, then click on collection, you can see all of the collectors that you have installed. And this will be true for your environment. Now, because you're logged in as an administrator, you have the add collector right. You've had other classes with us before, and you've had the analyst, you've logged in as a Training Plus analyst account. You did not have this add collector right. You have it now, okay? And what you want to do is you want to click add collector. Now, here's where I want to stop for a second. I don't want you to do anything. I want you just to watch. I can set up either installed collector or hosted collector. Since we don't talk much about hosted collectors, I'm going to do that right now. If I click on hosted collector, you'll see here I get to name this. I get to call it whatever I want. And I'll put my initials and call it hosted collector. I can specify a category here if I want to. I don't have to. I can assign it to a specific budget if I want to. You can create budgets for how you're billing and paying back. One of the requests customers have asked us is we want to be able to charge back for whatever reason or break it down into a budget. So we provided this functionality. You can also specify what time zone you're dealing with, okay? So pretty simple stuff here. When I click save, it's automatically going to add that hosted collector. And it says, do you want to create data sources of this collector? I'm going to say cancel for right now, just to show you how I can do it manually. If I do a search for JWM, which is the name of my hosted collector, JWM hosted collector, I'm going to do a search here. There is my hosted collector. You'll notice there is nothing underneath my collector. So I've created a collector, but I haven't created any sources. Here, if I want to, I can click add source. And for a hosted collector, these are the sources that you can create. So creating a collector for the cloud is very easy. Creating a source can be a lot more fun. So let's take something you all can probably relate to. Let's take good old Office 365. If I click on Office 365 here, and then again, I don't want you to do anything, just watch. I can give this a name, right? Office 365, whatever. And then I can put a description if I want to, and I get to pick what region of Office 365 I'm using. And then I get to pick the type of Office 365 content that I want. Then I have to have an account that's going to give me access to those logs. So this is how we deal with the security of Office 365. And then all we've got to do is save this. Now, there's these processing rules and some other settings. I'm going to go into more detail when we actually set up our collector. But as you can see, I need to have an account that has access to those logs. And that, folks, is how you set up. I'm going to cancel this. That is how you and I set up these various collectors. Give me a second here, folks. I'll be right back. I think we've got everybody and their brother here who wants to come out and try to solicit to me today. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So this hosted collector, as I said, I just wanted to show you how you can set one up. I don't need it. I'm going to delete it. So all I do is click on delete and it's gone. Now, what we want to do, what you want to do, what I want to do is we want to install a hosted collector. We want to install an installed collector. So we're going to click add collector. We click Add Collector here. And we want to click Install. So this is something I want you to follow along with me. So here in Lab 1, we went into Manage Data, we went into Collection. We're going to click on Installed Collector here on step 3, and we're going to pick the collector for our operating system. So whether you're running Linux, Windows, Unix, Mac, here we go. So I'm going to click Mac OS. And in my case, it's going to download my Sumo Logic collector file. And I can then open this up in my Finder or my Windows Explorer or whatever. There it is. And we're going to go ahead and run this. So before I run this, I want to make sure there's no questions. So let me go ahead and run this. Let me go ahead and double click on this application to run it. It says, you know, are you sure you want to open it? Yes, I'm sure I want to open it. Thank you. And it's going to start the process here of running my collector. Okay. I see we got a question in the chat box. Okay. Will this collector support TLS natively for syslogs? I believe the answer to that question, Jenkins, is yes, it will. So yeah, I'm sorry, it will. I'm sorry, we're automatically going to encrypt this stuff ourselves. So yes, it will. Now, when you try to install any software on your computer, I'm going to assume it's going to ask you for your password. It does on my machine, on my Mac. So let me type in my password here. So you can see we at Sumo Logic take passwords very seriously. So there you go. There's my password. And so Jenkins, to answer your question, it will support it. Will actually encrypt and do TLS natively. Absolutely, for your log. So it's going to encrypt that stuff. And I'll show you that in just a little bit. So here it brings up my Sumo Logic collector setup wizard. Hopefully it brings it up for you as well. I click next. It says, do I want to accept the agreement? Of course, I need to do that in order to press on. Click next. Now, I'm going to warn you. It's going to uninstall my previous version. Okay. It's going to install my previous version. Then it's going to proceed to install the current version. And then because this is the first time it did that, it's going to throw an error, I believe. No, maybe not. Okay, good. We fixed it. There used to be a situation where we used to throw an error, and if I ran it a second time, it would be fine. Okay. But I think they fixed it. Good. All right. So here in my advanced settings, you don't have to go into advanced settings, but I'm going to show you the advanced settings anyway. So if I click on advanced settings, here's my collector name. By default, it's going to use my host name. This is my host name. That's what it's going to use. I could also specify a host name if I wanted to. I could specify a category for this collector if I want to. We recommend putting the source categories in the sources, not the collectors. And then I could put a description in here if I want to. I can default and specify what time zone I want to pick, what percentage. I can restrict how much CPU it can use. It's not going to use much. So I'm going to let that go. And then there's some other settings in here as well. Okay. Oh, okay. Interesting, Jenkins. I'm going to have to talk about that. So thank you. Under my URL here, here's where it's going to send it to my default URL. So you don't have to worry about what the URL is to send it to Sumo. It's already there. It's embedded and baked into the product. I could override this if I need to, if support tells me to send it to a different URL. But here's where it's going to go to that URL. If you're using a proxy server, here's where you can specify your proxy settings. So if you're using a proxy server, you can do that. You can also have it put all your sources in a JSON file so that it installs your sources automatically. Now we're manually going to install our sources just so you can see how it works. But you could install your sources through a JSON file. And then here's somebody's question that somebody asked earlier. You know, where do I define who this runs as? Does it run as me, my user, my John Meredith account, or does it run as root, or does it run as administrator? Obviously, if you're on a Windows machine, it's administrator. If you're on a Linux Mac machine, it's a root user. Okay. And this, by the way, becomes a very interesting conversation for us. Those of you on a Mac like me, because of what Apple has done with regards to segregating root's capabilities from your user's capabilities a little bit. So I'll explain that in just a little bit. But these are the default settings, and I'm going to leave the default settings alone, and I'm going to click next. That's going to take me back to the summary. I'm going to click next, and now it says, okay, we want to authenticate with Sumo Logic. We want to be able to encrypt the data. We need to be able to create a session key. We can do that one of two ways. We can either use a token or an access key. Now, I'm going to explain what's going on, but the directions we're going to have is use access key. Back to my Sumo Logic environment, back in my collection, back here where I'm installing my collector, you'll see I've got a link for access keys. I've got a link for tokens. Tokens, if I click on them, are a one-time type system that we can use for an unattended installation, but it can be used one time and one time only. Okay, so that's what a token is. One time usage, and that's it, thrown away. Now, back here in my access keys, these can be used repeatedly over and over and over again. So I'm installing a bunch of sources, a bunch of collectors and stuff like that. I probably want to use an access key and use it once. This is one way to see, as an administrator, all the access keys on your system. Another way is you can go into your account. So again, if your navigation panel is not open, open it up, click on your name, click on your preferences, and in your preferences, you will see all of these lovely access keys that you may have. And in my case, I'm going to go ahead and delete a lot of these old access keys because I don't need them anymore. Don't worry about them. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click the button that says add an access key. And that is what we are doing per the directions here in lab 1, right? We've installed our collector. We've agreed to our agreement. We're right here. Here, we are going to generate our access key. So where we get this information, we're going to copy and paste it, is down below here. So here's how we get adding our access key. And we're going to type in something like client underscore our initials underscore AK. So I'm going to go back here. You can name it whatever you want to, but this is a client machine, right? This is my machine. And AK is access key, okay? You can name it however you want to. I don't really care, but that's it. Because I'm not behind a firewall or anything like that, I'm already on an allowed list. I don't have to worry about this statement right here. We'll talk more about allowed list later. But when we click create key, you'll see at this point in time, it gives us our access ID and our access key. Now, warning, Will Robinson, danger, danger, danger. This is the only time that you're going to see the access key. Once I click done, I will never see the access key again, and I'll prove that to you in a minute. So if you have a policy in your company that says if you create access credentials that are used somewhere in a system and you need to record them somewhere in a password manager or whatever, this is the time that you're going to want to do this. Because once you click the done button, you'll never see that access key again. Now, what we're going to do is take this access ID. I'm going to click the copy button. Then I'm going to go back to my installation here, my installation of my collector. I'm going to choose access key. I'm going to click next, and I'm going to paste this information in. And I'm going to go to the access key. I'm going to click copy, go back over to my collector installation, click paste. Then when I click next, it's going to try to connect to Sumo Logic. It's going to encrypt some data, send it, make sure it works. And it worked. And my collector is installed. So I can click finish on my installer. Now, back to my collector for a second, or back to my access key. As I said, when I click done, you will see it's been added to your access keys. And if you go in here to edit it, you will see that I can see the access ID, but I cannot see at all the access key. So the only time you'll see the access key is upon creation. All right. So now what we want to do per lab 1, going down the directions here a little bit, we want to make sure that our collector is there. So again, I'm going to go back here to my collectors. And again, if I need to, I can click on my main menu, manage data collection. And I want to do a search for, in my case, my initials. Not there. I want to do a search. I'm sorry, my mistake. I said the collector was going to be named, in my case, my host name. So let me search for my name there. Okay. I'll bite. Make sure I see my collectors. Okay, there it is. JM. JM, there it is. There's my collector right here. So this is not mine. This is mine. And you'll notice it doesn't have any sources in right now. Okay. So it's healthy, it's ready to go, good to go, and all that stuff. Let me clean up the questions. We'll take a break. Can you set up an expiration for an access key? Through our APIs, you can go in and clean it up, I think, but I'm not sure, Christopher. That's a good question, and I'm not 100% sure. By the way, I mentioned the APIs from time to time, so let me be more precise here if you don't mind. Just give me a second here. If I go to our documentation, and to get to our help documentation, it's real simple. Help.sumologic.com. That's our documentation. Help.sumologic.com. In here, we have a whole chapter on our APIs. And as I said, there's a collector management API where you can programmatically create your collectors and sources, all that stuff. I'm curious to see, I'd have to look in here for, there's token management API. So I suspect here's where I'm going to guess you can clean up and manage your tokens or your expire them and things like that. So hope that answers your question, or at least gives you an idea of where to find the answer. Okay. All right. All right. Any other questions before we consider taking a break? That's my lead in for, I told you we'd go for about an hour. So let's take a 10-minute break. Ladies and gentlemen, when this timer gets down to 0, I'd like you to go ahead and be back here and we will continue the class. So take 9 minutes and 51 seconds, and we'll talk to you in a few minutes. Thanks.
Hello, are you there? Hey.
Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, who is there?
This is Sorafia. How's it going?
Good. Hi.
Yes, I was just wondering, so I had stepped out for a little bit. Is the lab, has that been sent out, or will it be emailed out to us? Like
I think it's available for now. Maybe I think we just download it from their site.
Oh, okay.
From the link. That's what I assume, that from the link, we just go there, because probably maybe it's just like a lab that was set up for use. So
Okay,
just give us the link, and then the link we can go there, download, and then probably use it for a while.
Okay, okay, so it's there with the link that's sent out. Okay, let me see.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, folks, for those of you who heard the dog barking earlier, this is the dog. This is Max. He is my executive producer. He keeps an eye on me, make sure I do everything right. So, and of course, as you heard, he barks. So just wanted you to see. Thanks. All right, folks, welcome back. So hopefully you all had a chance to take a break and that sort of thing. When we last left off, we had created and installed our collector. Now, also during the break, Odell has posted up in the chat box a PDF version of the slides. So you should be able to access and download that PDF. If you cannot, please in the chat box to host and participants, send us your email address and we will email it to you. Okay. And Odell, if you would take care of that, I'd appreciate it. So if you can't download it from the chat box, and some of your companies may have restricted the ability to grab files through chat or through Zoom, so I get it. We'll email it to us if you provide your email address. Okay. So there is that. Now, let's get back to the labs here. So we did lab 1. And in lab 2, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put a text file. That was that text file that we downloaded earlier. So you may recall on my computer here, let me do a little housekeeping here. Try to do a little housekeeping here. There we go. Close that stuff up, get rid of my collector. I don't need this anymore. Again, I can eject it, no sweat. But on here, we downloaded this file, okay? And I downloaded it to my desktop. So back in lab 1, they had you download this file. We did that. And so what I need to do is I need to put it in a specific place where the root count or the administration account can get to it. Now, if you're on a Windows machine, the administrator can get to anything on your machine. No fuss, no muss. But on a Mac recently, Apple has changed things so that the root account can't necessarily get into a user's directory. Apple being focused on security and privacy and all that stuff, it's the new challenge, but that's okay. So if I go back here to lab 1 and we skip over here to lab 2, we finished up lab 1, we're going to add a source. So what we need to do is we need to put this into a directory. If you're on a Windows machine, we recommend you put it in your TEMP directory, your temp directory. So again, bring up your Windows Explorer, go to your TEMP directory, copy and paste that file to that directory. Now, in my case, I have to go to my TMP directory on a Mac, which is a bit of a pain in the neck. So I'm going to bring up a Finder, which is the equivalent of Windows Explorer. And here under Finder, I'm going to click Go. And I'm going to say Go to Folder. and I want to go to /TMP. And the reason I'm going there is because the administrator has rights to the TMP directory. It's under private. The administrator has rights to this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this file and I'm going to drag it into my TMP directory. I'm also, just because I don't like typing a whole bunch of stuff, okay, because I'm going to also rename this file. Now, you don't have to, but I'm going to rename this file, and I'm just simply going to call it Apache logs dot txt. Okay, just because I'm just trying to avoid a typing exercise here. Now, so we're putting this file in a place that the account can then access it. That's what we're doing. Any questions? All right, then. So that's what we're doing this exercise. The next thing I need to do is I need to go in and create my source. So I'm going to go back here to Sumo. I'm going to go back to, again, my navigation panel, back to my manage data collection, my collection tab. I am going to search for my collector. There it is. And here is, over to the right is an add button, an add link. I'm going to click on that add link, and you'll see here that I can add a source. So we're going to add this source. Now, because this is a installed collector, our choices are different. I can add a local file. That's the files on my machine. I could add a remote file, a file on another machine. I could grab syslog or Docker logs or scripts or host metrics. We'll see host metrics in just a minute. Okay. So in our case, we want to grab this local file. Click on local file, and I'm going to give this thing a name, right? I can call it JWM Apache logs. You know, you want to put your initials in there and call it Apache logs. Now, you notice that the file path is required, and it is. So here is where I'm going to specify where that file is. And so I'm going to type in /TMP/ and I called it Apache logs. All one word, .txt. So I'm telling it where this file is and the name of that file. Now, truth be told, I could have just specified a directory here and it would grab anything from the directory that's there. So I could have defined this as a directory and put it to the directory. And I'll get more into that in just a second. It says collection should begin based on 24 hours ago. I can define a source host, which I don't need to do. We do recommend that you define a source category. And here in lab 2, the source category they want me to use is prod/Apache/access. Prod/Apache/access. Now, again, whatever naming convention you might have for your company is what you would in fact use. Okay, let's talk about these fields. You have the ability, I have the ability to add fields here, right? Maybe this is dealing with a specific business unit. So I could create a field called BU or business unit, and I could specify the value. Maybe it's my accounting department, my marketing department, whatever. I can search for these fields and values if I want to, these key value pairs. So when you create a source, you can also put in key value pairs to make it easy to search by. Sometimes people don't like a source category because it's too long. Well, you can use key value pairs if you want to organize your data a little bit more. So that's why key value pair is there. Okay. All right. Somebody's asked a question. UNC path should use what for the drive letter on the Windows machine? Actually, if you're on your Windows machine, you don't. So I need a well, I don't think you need a UNC path, but if you needed to, you could use $, that's fine. But I recommend just put the relative path. You should be able to put /TEMP or /Windows/TEMP path or where that file is. Typhoid, does that answer your question? Oops, hold on. Okay, good. Okay, only using it UNC because it tells me to. Okay, great. So, all right. Remember earlier, a moment ago, I said that this could be this file path could actually be a folder. And what you can do with this deny list is you can say, look, I want to grab everything in that folder except for. So this deny list is if that's a folder. You can specify, I don't want you to grab this or that or something in that folder. So you can put in the file names of what you don't want to grab. Now, if I process this, do I want to extract my timestamp information from my log? You probably do. Take advantage of it, right? So when that log has timestamp information, you want to parse that stuff out. What time zone do I want to use here? My collector time zone, or do I want to pick a specific time zone? What format do I want to use? Automatically detect my format, or I can specify a format. For those of you in Europe and stuff like that, your date formats are a little different from us today in the United States. That's where you can specify that. What kind of encoding am I going to use? That sort of thing. Now, one other thing I didn't mention till now, but I'll go ahead and talk about it. Processing rules for logs. Sometimes your log data is going to have data that's private, that's sensitized, that you don't want to see. So you can, we can create processing rules for logs. We give our rule a name, whatever we want to call it. And then we write a filter expression. So this is where you need to know a little bit of how we do expressions in Sumo Logic. But I could say, I'm looking for, I do a parse anchor for the credit card information or the social security number or whatever. And then I can say, look, the things that match this, the social security number, the credit card number, exclude them, include them, hash them, turn them into hashtags, mark these, mask these messages, all kinds of different things that you can do as far as processing rules that you can, mask out that information or hide that information or exclude that information. So I'm going to cancel out of that. I don't need to really worry about that. I'm just showing you that you can. Okay. So we've added, basically what we've done is we've added this name, we've added our file path, we've added our source category. Everything else is standard defaults. We're going to go ahead and click save. That then creates our source. And if I wait a minute or two here, do the exclusions support regular expressions? Yes, type 5 they do. Yes. Yep. So you can use our regular expressions in there. Regexes and stuff. Yeah, you can do the regex for that stuff. Yes. So what happens is if I wait a little bit, I can actually go to the source category. I can click on this, and this will generate a log query for this. Now, the problem is by default, our log query looks at the last 15 minutes. I want to go back to the last 24 hours. And when I rerun this in a little while, it may take a minute or so, I will actually see my log data here. Okay. I will actually see my log data. Okay. In fact, just for fun, let me remove my collector. This and try it again. Okay. So I'm seeing lots of different, there's our log data here of what's coming in from prod.apache.access. So I just want to make sure that things are working. I'm getting the stuff ingested in. Okay. Another thing that you can do is you could actually run live tail. Now, only 10 people can concurrently run live tail at a time, but I could do something like this: collector equals J Meredith _ Mac. And now I can see all the information being ingested by the J Meredith -Mac machine. Okay. And right now it's really not ingesting anything, but it will over time. Okay. So that's a live tail. Just wanted to mention it to you. All right. That concludes lab number 2. Any questions about lab number 2? Okay. Lab number 3, what we're going to do is we're going to create a metric source, bring in our metric information. So we're going to do this. We've already got our collector. We're going to bring in our metric source. What's the other question is? Okay. Typhi says, yes, relative path does not appear to find the file. We'll have to look into that, Typhi. So good question. I don't know. I'll have to troubleshoot and see what's going on there. Okay. All right. So meanwhile, back to lab 3. Again, back here in my source, on my collector, excuse me, my collector, I want to add another source. So I click add source on my collector. This time I want to grab my host metrics. I click on host metrics. Again, I can call this anything I want to as far as a name. I'll use my initials and call it host metrics. Again, I'm going to leave description and source host blank. Don't have to use them. But on my source category, I am going to use, I think they want us to use prod/host metrics. So source category, yeah, prod/host metrics. Okay. Personally, I'd probably use prod/JWM/host metrics, so I know where these host metrics are coming from. But again, I've got those metadata tags here. How often do you want me to bring in data here? So in the case of my metrics, I'm going to jack it to every 10 seconds. You can go with a default of 1 minute, but I want to get stuff in here quickly. And then the question is, what metrics do you want to bring in? What do you want to check? You know, and you can see by the tooltips here what these values are and what they mean. Now, I'm going to grab all of my stuff. You don't have to, but I'm going to grab all of my stuff. And so I'm going to check it all. And then I'm going to click save. And so here is my second source that we have created. And again, if I look by my source categories, that's a lovely blue button. I can click on that lovely blue button here. And in a minute or so, I will start seeing some host metrics. This may take a little bit of time for it to start ingesting. But it will eventually start ingesting. Okay. Okay. Ryan asked a really good question. Where can you view the current metadata flag set up for a particular source? Well, Ryan, that's a good, you could, I'm sure there's probably a way that you could query it. Query the source and then go for and look at your metadata flags. But we typically have, let me back up for a second here. Under collection, under if you used these key values, you could go into the source and you could look at these values right there. So that's one way. But if you're talking about the metadata tags, we typically have source category, collector, source, source path. Those are the standard metadata tags that we have. And you can write a query to look at those if you want to. So, but I'm not, I mean, I'd like to give an actual query here, Ryan, that you could use that would help you out. So, but that's, I need to do a little research on that. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Just for fun here, let me go out here. There we go. I'm starting to get data in now. Starting to get data here on my various metrics. Okay. Looks like some of these aren't mine. Some of these are yours. For example, here I've got CJ's. That's his data. There's my data because we're all using the same source category name. By the way, when you are done with this class and you don't want to bring your data into Sumo anymore, all you have to do is go to your collector, right? Go to your collector. Go to your collector and you can delete it. And that will keep any data from going back into Sumo. You can also uninstall your collector if you want to after the class. But that takes care of labs 1, 2, and 3. Any questions? Okay. Before we get in labs 4 and 6, and I'll explain why we skip 5 here in just a little bit. Before we get in labs 4 and 6, let me go back to my slides here for just a little bit. And let's talk about some other things. Some ways that we can improve performance, okay? Can you redirect collectors without installation or uninstallation of a collector? It depends on the type of collector. If you're using a hosted collector, yes. If you use an installed collector, I don't think so. Okay. So good question. Typhi, is there another question? Then you should raise your hand. It's another question. Okay, great. All right. Okay. Somebody asked the question, I explained the difference between local file and remote. So in those sources, you had local file. That means it's local to your computer. It's on your computer. It's on the same place the collector is installed. Remote file means it's not on your computer. It's on another machine. It's on a remote machine. So that's your remote file. So hopefully that answers your question and puts that little rascal to bed. Okay. All right. So as an administrator, you guys, we get to talk about optimizing things, right? We got to talk about optimizing tools. And there's two broad categories. There are ways that we can optimize using fields. There are ways we can optimize using indexes and partitions and things like that. So in the optimization tools, you can, I can, we can do field-based optimization. And the way we use field-based optimization is we use field-based extraction rules and field browsers. So I'm going to explain this to you here real quick and try to put it to you in very succinct terms. If I go out here and create a log search on a normal source that doesn't have any field extraction rules applied to it, and I know what that source is called. So if I go out here and say source category equals lab/snort, which is a security application device, you'll see here in my field browser, I have my standard metadata tags: collector, size, source, source category, source host, source name. These come with, they're always there, regardless of whatever, they're always going to be there. Now, what I can do, or what you can do as an administrator, is under logs, there is something here called field extraction rules. So under logs, I've got something here called field extraction rules. And you can, I can, we can create a rule. Now, I believe the add rule for you guys is grayed out, but I have it. Okay, it's a specific right that we can set up. But I want to show you what a field extraction rule is. So when I go in here, I'm looking for my lovely example. Looks like somebody removed my lovely example. Okay, not a big deal. Let me just go ahead and see. Let me go ahead and actually tell you what, let me click add rule. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and create it. So I'm going to create this FER demo. Okay. Field extraction rule demo. And what happens is we want to parse these fields out at ingestion time. Okay. So at ingestion time, I want to grab where my source category equals my lab/Apache/access. Okay. And there it resolves to that source name. So anything coming in from my Apache access logs, I want to grab in. Now, good news. I don't have to worry about writing a lot of code because we've got a bunch of pre-built templates that you can use. We know what the Apache access logs look like. We know what IIS logs look like. We know what Palo Alto network logs look like. And so I can use this, for example, Apache access logs up here template, and it provides my code in here to parse out specific fields. So I can say I want to use this template, and it's going to put it in my parse expression. And you'll notice it's going to create some fields called srcip and method and URL and all that stuff. By using these field extraction rules, I do two things. Number one, I automatically parse out the fields that my users want so they don't have to parse them out. Two, I also provide a consistent name for them. For example, here on the source IP, I'm going to go up here where the code is, and I'm going to change that to source_IP. So I'm going to rename that field, okay, just to make it a little easier. And that means everybody's going to use this name. They're going to see this name. So I can save this field extraction rule. And now when my Apache logs get brought in, it's automatically going to parse out that data. So now if I go to log and log search, and I go to source category equals lab/Apache /access, and I run this, it may take a second or two for this to take effect, but eventually it's going to parse out, and I'll see those fields down here, okay? Just waiting for it to process my field extraction rules, okay? So you can create field extraction rules that parse out those fields, and then your users can select those fields and add them in here without having to create them. So this is our field browser. And for example, if I'm looking at JSON logs that are from a JSON source, lab/AWS/CloudTrail, for example, we automatically parse out all JSON fields. So when I look at a JSON log source, all of these various fields, let me expand all here so you can see there are lots and lots of fields here. We automatically parse them out. So you or a user, rather than having to write parse statements to parse things out, you or a user could go in here and say, you know, I really want the event ID, I really want the event name, I really want the AWS region, and now it's going to display that information for us. We don't have to parse those things out. So this is one of the ways that we can optimize and improve things. So we create these field extraction rules that are being used by the field browser. Now, one other thing that the field browser does for us, if I look at the fields, whether I've checked them or not, if I put my cursor over them and just click on it, you'll see I get a pop-up menu that shows me how many values out of my AWS region, out of my log messages, how many came from each region, and what the breakdown is by percentage. If this number is 10 or less, I see the actual values. If it's greater than 10, like it is here, event ID, if I click on it, it shows me my top 10. So it shows me my top 10, again, based on number, based on percentage. So I can see where things are coming from at a glance. I can do the same thing down here. Okay. So that's another thing my field browser offers. Any questions about the field browser or field extraction rules? All right, let's take the other side of the equation. Over here, index-based, there's two ways to improve performance. I can create partitions and I can create scheduled views. All right, partitions and scheduled views. Let me stick onto the slides here for just a little bit, if you don't mind. So when I do partitions, I can break your data up so that I can very easily search for things. I'm not looking at all of my data. I'm looking at a subset of my data. My partitions are smaller. Now, partitions only work if there's no overlap in your data. So when I create partitions, I can't have one set of data going into two partitions. That's not going to work for me. The other thing is we want less than 20 partitions. The more partitions we have, the more overhead we have. So we want to try to keep that down. And when you're creating a partition, you want that partition to be somewhere between 1 and 30% of your total volume. If it's 98% of your total volume, there's nothing gained for performance, right? It still has to go through the whole dang volume to figure things out. So ideally, the smaller we can get there, the better we're going to be. Obviously, when we create our partitions, we want to look at data that's grouped together, that search most often. And we can also define how long we want to retain this data, which is really kind of cool. So let's talk about creating partitions. Again, back to Sumo Logic, back to logs. There's a section, a tab here called partitions. And here I can see all the various partitions that are created. I can, you can, we can add a partition if we want to. We can give it a name. Now, one other thing with regards to our partitions, We also realize that for charging and business purposes and all stuff, we have 3 built-in data tiers that you can use. Continuous, which is something you're continuously looking at. We charge a bit more for it. Frequent tiers, which is something you're not going to look at very as frequently and infrequently and that sort of thing. We charge a little less for that. And then there's an infrequent tier, which we charge then by the query. That's something you're going to look at very occasionally. That is a situation we charge by the query. So you can decide what data tier you want to apply this partition to. Then you get to define the query that is going to define this partition. For example, maybe I want all of my data. Actually, let me do this. I want all of J. Meredith's data in this partition, and maybe I'll make it infrequent. Okay. So I can partition this up by collectors, by sources, by whatever I want to. And I can also define how long do I want to retain this in days. So maybe I only want to retain this for 60 days. Maybe I want to retain it for 365 days. You can define your retention policy. Now, we do have, let me close out of this and ignore this for a second, cancel this, discard it. We do have a default continuous partition that was created. And the reason that partition is created is we specify what our default retention period is. And if we want, we can apply our default retention period to another period if we want to. Also, when you create partitions, you can also forward your data to something else, right? Let's face it. If you're putting your data in our system, we're going to charge you about data ingestion. It may cost you a little bit for us to store it. You can go in here to data forwarding, create like an S3 bucket or some other bucket that you want it to go to. And when you create your partitions, you can then forward it to that partition because the rates are much cheaper to save it in your S3 bucket than say in Sumo Logic. You undoubtedly have requirements that says I need to save information for a number of years or whatever. Might be cheaper to put it someplace else other than inside Sumo Logic. So you can data forward if you want on these partitions. Now that's your partitions. Now, while we're here, let's talk about scheduled views. Scheduled views automatically run in the background every minute. So I can write a query that is going to get some data. It's going to aggregate my data and do some various other things. And it automatically updates and runs this query. So every minute it takes the new information, applies it to this, and off to what we run. We just add it to that data. So again, it runs it in the background every minute, so it keeps the data fresh. And therefore, if I run off of a scheduled view, its performance tends to be very fast. So if we're looking at specific smaller historical subsets of data that we want to pre-index, pre-aggregate, right? We can create scheduled views. This is allow us to pre-aggregate the data. Please do not insert comments into these because it may affect the parsing of the pipes. So don't comment out anything if you can avoid it. We recommend, again, for every 10,000 logs that you only have one result. And the way that you're going to access this is by using the underscore view equals the name of that view. And the data doesn't count against your ingest volumes at all, okay? So this is something that we can use to improve performance. Any questions about scheduled views? Okay. Here are some examples where we might want to use scheduled views. Again, they automatically update every minute. So they're constantly updated, they're constantly fresh.
Is there any limits to the number that we could have of scheduled views?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. I know there's a limit to fields, so that's what I was asking.
Not that I'm aware of.
All right, thanks.
But again, yeah, I'm not 100% sure. So let's talk a little bit about data management here and stuff like that. So let's take a look at some screens. And if you don't mind, I'm going to stop the slides here for a second. And I'm just going to take you through a walk through the product with the screens. Let's see what's in the Q&A box. What is the limit to fields? Somebody asks. Forgot. Does anybody remember the actual limit to the fields? How many fields you can have? And I think we can bump that up. Our support team can actually bump that up for you. But I forgot what the limit is to fields. So
I believe it's per tenant. If
Yep.
you click on the fields, it shows you at the bottom.
oh, here you go. You're right. So if I click on fields here, it says your account is using this many fields of 350. So there you go. Good question. So, and again, I think that can be adjusted. All right. So let's talk about in your administration here under account, and let's walk through this stuff. So here under administration, under account, I can see here's my organizational ID. This is the environment, the Sumo Logic environment that I'm using. I can see my contract period. I can see what kind of plan I have. I can see my current utilization. Am I exceeding my utilization? Am I getting close to my utilization? How am I doing? So right now, my expected usage is only 6.9. I'm underutilizing my environment. That's cool. If it was higher, I might worry that I'm burning through credits and burning through things a little bit too fast. Down here, I can see my credits to see how I'm doing. I can see whether I'm using continuous intelligence or frequent intelligence or metric ingest or how things are being consumed. By the way, you can obviously turn on or turn off certain things so you can see how things are going. See where you're spending your money. All right. So there's that tab. Under data management, there is a data volume check. We have a nice little application called Data Volume that you can install. It's in our app catalog. And if you check mark this checkbox, you will be able to see that app, install that app, and see that data. Now in Lab 4, that's one of the apps that we're going to install. So I'll actually, let me get to it right now. So here in the app catalog, if I do a search for data volume, there it is, the data volume app. You can, I can, we can add that to library. Now, I've already added it to my library, so I don't have to do this. In fact, if I go in here and there it is, there's my data volume app. If I install this app and if I go in here to data management and I check mark this, so now I make data available to that app. Now I can see applications that show me how am I doing with regards to capacity utilization. How much data am I ingesting? What kind of log spikes am I starting to see here as far as my traffic? So if you're worried about your cost consciousness nature of Sumo, and I can't imagine a customer who probably isn't curious, I can see how much data volume I'm ingesting in logs, how much data volume I'm ingesting in metrics. So I can see where my money is being spent. Okay. I can see, again, my top 5 collectors, various top 5 categories, source hosts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is an application that you can install in Lab 4, and I'll give you some time to do that in just a little bit. Okay. Now back to my, let me close all these up. Again, on any one of these tabs, I click on the 3 vertical dots, say close all tabs, boom. Then I'm going to go back here to my account administration account. And then the third part here is manage plan. If you find that you're spending too much money or you want to adjust your account, you can go in here to manage plan and you can specify what you want to do here. And you can click on that and our account team will get back to you to make those adjustments. Okay. So it's an easy way to communicate with your account team about what you may want to do with the account, whether you want to grow it up, grow it down, whatever you want to do. Moving on here to users and roles. You and I have the ability to create a user, right? I can go in here and click add user. I can give them a first name, a last name, an email address, and then I can assign them to various roles. I can assign them to as many roles as I want to. Roles are where they get their permissions. So I take a user, I assign them to roles, pure and simple. Now, Over here are my roles. So in my roles, you can add a role, give it a name. We'll call this accounting. These are going to be my accounting folks. And I can put a description in here if I want to. And here is where I can specify a search filter. So if I want to restrict this role to only see data in my accounting, I could go in here and do something like source category equals lab/accounting. And the only data that they're going to be able to see, the only source data is my accounting data. So that's what that's all about. Additionally, here's where I give them rights. Whether they can view collectors, they can manage collectors, they can manage ingest budgets. All the different rights that they can do are done through my roles. We use role-based access control. So everything's controlled by the roles, role-based access control. Also, who can manage my users, all of that fun stuff. Here's where I can access your Cloud SIM. Those of you who use our Cloud SIM product, if I give you the ability to view it, you'll see that menu option over here to the side. And then there's other rights and configurations we can give you. We'll talk more about that in tomorrow and more importantly, Thursday's class. We get into Cloud SIM. But this is how we set up our users. We add our users, we assign them to roles, and then off to the races they go. That is our security. All right. Now, under my security tab. Oh, by the way, one other thing about users. Sorry. When I delete a user, it's going to ask me to, what do I want to do with all their material, all their personal folder and stuff like that. We need to designate that that folder can go to another user. So for example, if John Meredith's no longer with the company and they decide to delete my account, they're going to ask me, when I delete that account, it's going to say, what do you want to do with John Meredith's personal folder? You got to put it someplace. So maybe your company has a graveyard for stuff like that, or maybe you give it to their boss, whatever your company policies are. But it makes a really good test question, right? The test question is, what happens when you delete a user? What must you do with their information? You've got to give it to somebody. Now, in the security tab here, I got my password policy. If you're using us for security, you're not using some other party, some multi-factor authentication or whatever, here is your security policy. Here under SAML, security access, security assertion markup language, here's where you can add other third-party authentication systems. That would be your, how we authenticate, how we sign in, okay? Now, under service allow list settings, what this does is I can put in an IP address, or I can put in an IP address with a CIDR. For example, this is an IP address. This is an IP address. This bottom one, 10.213.207.245/32 is a CIDR. Forgot classless internet domain routing, I think is what it stands for. But what it basically means is anybody has a 103.219.207 IP address, we're going to let them come in. So you can specify and allow either people to come into Sumo without having to log in by their IP address, or they can also allow and see dashboards. So I can enable logins. I can enable logins so they don't have to log in at all. If they're on the approved list, they can come right in, which kind of violates your security. But maybe I've got some shareholders that I want to be able to let log in. Now, and I don't want them to have to go through the rigmarole of security, which of course, if I'm a shareholder, I'm going to gasp, but that's me. I can also specify that they can allow certain dashboards. So even if they, don't have rights to the environment or whatever, they can come in through their IP address, they can see those dashboards. That's a more practical use case. So this is where we can specify allow list settings or deny list settings that people can come in and they can access things without having to log in. Here's my access keys again, listing of all my access keys. I can manage these here. Here's where my installation tokens are, where I can manage those. Now, policies. Here's a bunch of policies, and they're there for some good reasons. My Sumo Logic auditing. we have an audit app that you can install. That's another thing you're going to install in lab number 4. All right. In lab number 4, you're going to install an audit app. This audit app lets us see the activity of what's going on in your Sumo Logic environment. If you're an administrator, what are my users doing inside of Sumo? There's an overview dashboard. I can see where they're coming in from, who the active users are, what's happening, et cetera, et cetera. Not only can I see what my users are doing, but there's an admin dashboard, so I can see what my administrators are doing, what those evil folks are up to, right? Maybe you can be audited, which is not a bad thing. There's no activity. I haven't done anything, so we are in good shape there. But I can see, again, who's logging in. I can see, you know, imported, exported stuff, all kinds of nice dashboards here. But in order to get this data available, I have to, in security, check mark this checkbox. So it enables your audit records for your account. Okay. Again, it also gives you the ability to search audit records. So you can create a query here. That's what this checkbox does. Now, this one, support account access. You may think that we have full rights into your system because we are, after all, the provider of that system. We don't. And we do this intelligently because we want to protect your data. So you may put a ticket in, say, I got a problem, that sort of thing. Our support folks will look around functionally at your system, but we may ask you to turn this on so we can get into your data and see what's going on. All right. But by default, it's turned off. And you've got to go in and grant us access. And then when we're done, you want to deny us or clear that checkbox so we don't have access to it anymore. Your system is your system. Your data is your data. We don't necessarily want to see it. Keep in mind that all of our support folks are bonded and all that good stuff. You want to be able to share dashboards outside of your organization. You can check mark this so that when they go in and create a dashboard, there's an option to share it outside the organization. When somebody wants to run a dashboard, do they run it under the context of who created the dashboard or their own context? If this is checked, right, we're going to look at the viewer's role. If it's not checked, then we're going to look at it based on the creator's role, the creator's privileges. Per user concurrent session limit. How many windows, tabs do you want them to log into their Sumo Logic environment? Do you want to restrict it? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Here is the user session timeout. So when a user is logged in, how long before, if they're idle, how long before they have to log in again? This is your session for everybody. And then, of course, when a user is created, that user inherits that setting. And in the user's preferences, that can be changed so that you can restrict it change it for a different user. That's in their preferences. Good news, I'm just about done. So bear with me a second while I clean up a couple things, and we'll wrap up some questions, let you do some labs and do some other things. So I've gone through all the options here. Again, in lab 4, there's 2 apps here, data volume and audit, that you can install, and then you can see that information from those things there. You can also create ingestion budgets. So again, in your collection tab, there's an ingestion budget. You can define budgets because, again, maybe you're charging back to different departments. So you can create budgets to set as guardrails for cost sharing and overconsumption. Okay. You'll find that we've got in here your alerts tab. So here's your home tab. Here's your content administration tab. I'll get into that in a second. And then here's your alerts. You can see all of the alerts that you have or that have been created. So here I can go into, actually, I want to go into monitoring under managed data. And here's where I can see all of your alerts. And if you want to, you can create containers, folders for these. So for example, I can take all my AWS environments, put all my alerts for an AWS environment in a specific folder if I want to. Come on, open up. Okay. These all happen to be disabled. So, but I can then also create a container for them. I can also then create a new monitor. And when you create these new monitors, these alerts, do you want to do a query based on log and log data, or metric data? And again, is it going to be a static? Are we going to use some sort of outlier function here as far as the functions? And then you write your query here as far as what's going on. So if I go in here and say, gee, my collector equals J Meredith Mac right there, I am looking at J Meredith's machine. This is the data that I'm looking at. And if I run it, there we go. I can see some data. Now, the question is, I can specify an alert based on if they're missing some data, right? They're not, the system went down, right? Tell me there's problem. If I can set warning levels or critical levels. So again, based on these numbers, not really a good example, but based on these numbers, maybe I want to set a warning level at 6 and a critical level at 10. So I can say, you know what, warn me when we get above 6 and critical when we get above 10. And also, not only will it tell you when these conditions happen, it will also notify you when you recover. And you can set the recovery at the same level, or you can throw the switch and set it at a different level. So you're defining the trigger mechanism, what's triggering this. Then down here, you get to define how you want to be notified. Do you want to be notified via an email? Do you want to be notified via Datadog? Do you want to be notified via Slack, via Microsoft Teams, via various webhooks that you and I can create to connect to various things, PagerDuty and things like that. And then you can go ahead and say, look, I want this email or this whatever to fire. Here's what I want it to say. And, you know, I want it to fire during these conditions. So you and I can create monitors to be proactive here to notify us when something's wrong. By the way, the save button's up here at the top, which I wish it was down at the bottom because I want to drag you through the thing and then hit the save button. But I'm going to cancel out of this and discard my changes. But that is our monitoring. You can also get there by clicking here and going to your various monitoring and alerts this way. Okay. All right. One other thing I need to point out in the slides, I talked about accounts. This makes a great test question. Just give me a second here. There it is. By default, when you use Sumo Logic, there are 2 default user roles, right? We talked about roles. The administrator can manage users and roles. They can also view and manage collectors. They do not have any data access. They can manage views and roles, users and roles. They can manage collectors. Analyst has full data access, but can't manage any collectors or users. And obviously you can adjust these and you can do things, but these are the default user roles, the 2 of them, administrator and analyst. And these are what they can do. Okay. And of course you can create your own roles and stuff in there as well. All right, one last thing, and then I will we'll talk about the last exercises here and we'll go from there. Let me close up these tabs. Let's get a little crazy. Since you are the administrator, obviously there's this library, the shared library. How do things get into this shared library? How does that happen? How do I manage things? Well, if you click on this folder tab, this is your content administration tool. This is your folder tool. And normally, if you have content administration privileges, not only will you be able to view it as you and see your folders and all that, but you'll also be able to view it as a content administrator. Now that I'm a content administrator, now I can go in here and I can look at a specific user's personal folder. Maybe I want to find that John Meredith guy. Find all the Johns here. Well, okay. You have a second here. Let me try Odell. Okay. Give me one more try here. Okay. I was hoping to find some stuff here, so bear with me a second. I'll tell you what, let's not worry about this for right now. Just hit the enter key and be done with it. Okay. So I can go in and I can find a user. Let me find good old Bargavy here. She usually has stuff in here. And if I want to, I can take her stuff as a content administrator and I could delete it. I can share it. I can export it. But most importantly, I can move it. So I can take this folder and I can move it. And I can actually move it up here to the shared library and put it somewhere in the shared library. So this content administrator role allows you to move content around and move things out here to the shared library. Now, when you're done with the content administrator role, make sure you revert back to your role. So now you're seeing everything normal. But this is how things get added to the admin recommended folder. And we do recommend an admin recommended folder that you put stuff in that your users should have access to very easily. Questions? Let's talk about the labs because I've skipped a couple labs. So again, in lab 4, you can, I can, we can. There's 2 apps they want you to install. Install the audit app, install the and share the audit app if you want. And then also you can do the same with the data volume app. You can install it and you can share it. Okay. You don't have to, but if you want to, you can. I've got those apps, so in case you're curious what they look like, I'll share them with you. Lab 5, remember the directions we talked about going to lab 4 and lab 6. We're skipping lab 5. What lab 5 is it's labs 2 through 6 of our fundamentals. If you don't have a background as in doing our analyst tool, you may want to go back and do lab 5 to give you some exposure to our, running queries and stuff like that. Okay. But normally, if you've had our fundamentals or our search mastery class, you don't really need to do lab 5. That's why it's kind of an optional. Then finally, lab 6 is we have a query here that I can copy and that I can paste, that I can create an alert on if we start consuming too much data. So we have provided for you a sample here of a query that you and I can use if we start consuming too much data. And if I copy and paste this code in, what it's doing is it's looking at my Sumo Logic volume, specifically looking at my collector volume. And I'm parsing using some regular expressions out, some stuff. I'm dividing my file size, my bytes, by 1024, 1024, 24, 1024 to give me gigabytes, to convert them to gigabytes. And basically, I'm calculating how many gigabytes I have by collectors. Then I'm looking and arbitrarily putting in a value here, a constant. 100 is my plan size. Maybe your plan size is 200 gigabytes. Maybe it's 300. You can change it. And I'm basically comparing how many gigabytes I have right now compared to my plan size to make sure I'm not ingesting too much or make sure I'm not burning through my credits too quickly. So this will tell me if I've got issues, if I've got problems, okay? Again, I'm looking to see my today's value against my plan. I've set a threshold value up here. These are the things that might be suspicious. Now, if I want to, here I can change this number. Let's make it 20. I'm 20% of plan instead of 2% of plan. And now when I run this, I think I'm going to see a lot less results. Yeah. Okay, there we go. I'm seeing 6 pages of results here. Let me change this to 0.2. See how much I see here. Hopefully I see a lot less. Bottom line is you can set your threshold in here to whatever it is that you want to see. So you can see how you're doing on your percentage of plan, that along with your plan size. So yeah, I didn't get any results. So you can adjust this value, based on what you want to make sure that you're not burning through too many credits. Okay. And I've got an extra period in here. So that's why it's balking at me. So that's what this little exercise is. It's just a sample here that you can use. Can we set the global default for? Yes, you can. I'm sorry. Can we set a global default dashboard for our organization? Christopher, explain to me what your goal here is. What's your use case?
Well, the use case is that everyone who logs in has this beautiful view of everything in our organization. And then they can, mess around with this as they want. But currently we don't have, we just have like a very basic Sumo Logic dashboard to look at as soon as we log in. So I was just wondering if there's a way to set a default or like set it up for our organization where all the users first time when they log in, they just see this pretty dashboard with all the information required.
That's going to be a support question. That's not, I don't know the answer to that question. There's not an easy way to do that. One thing though, as you probably all know, whatever tabs I leave open, when I close, I'm going to see those same tabs again. So we do retain the things that you have open. So if there's some way, and I think programmatically, we can get it to display a dashboard, a specific, dashboard query, whatever you want. I'm sure we can promulgate that, but you also have to make it available to them in the library. But as far as opening it, you can either get it to open or you can programmatically probably open it. But that's going to be a support question. Not one that I know the answer to.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you for asking. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? All right, it's exam time. I realize I ran about 25 minutes late. I apologize for that, but in covering this stuff, we always add new features, and so it tends to run longer and longer. You will still have an hour for the exam. You'll have, an hour for the exam. It's going to run a little late, but just want you to be aware. What we want you to do to take the exam is, number one, we want you to log out of the training environment. Why? Because right now you're logged in as training plus admin at, some number at sumologic.com. And that person has taken the exams and passed the exam lots of times. All right. So I don't want you to take the exam with that account. I want you to go into our training environment. Again, open this navigation panel if you haven't done so already. And I want you to click on your name, and you'll see there's an option to sign out. I want you to sign out of our training environment. Please sign out. Now I want you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment with your credentials so that when I take you into the exam area, you're able to see the exams and you'll get credit by your name, right? So you're going to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment. And when you do that, hopefully on the left-hand corner here, if you open it up, you will see that there is your name. Okay. And then to get into the testing area, you're going to click on the House tab. You're going to click on this certification tab. And on this certification tab, there's a Get Certified button. Now, this is something Odell's probably not aware of because it was something we talked about. We as a company talked about, and some of you may not have been aware that there's a change. But when you click on that Get Certified button, some of you are going to get a pop-up that's going to appear right here, right now, that says, we need to verify your email. And there's a little button on it that says verify email or whatever. You just click on that button. So we used to actually have to force people to go into the community to be able to get this button so we could get past this. But they said they were going to fix it so that if you didn't have access to this from the Sumo Logic environment, when you click on Get Certified, if it takes you back here to home, basically what that is that's a security setting. We don't want to move you from one environment to another environment without your permission. So now when you click on Get Certified, they finally fixed this. So if you don't have that permission, you don't have the rights, you aren't able to go here. But what you'll see is you'll see a pop-up menu, a pop-up window that will appear that has a button on it that says something like verify email or allow or something like that. If you click on that, within a minute, you'll get an email from Sumo Logic. So find it. It's hopefully in your inbox. Maybe it's in your spam filter, whatever. Find that email, and in the body of that email, there is another button. Click on that button. This problem goes away. Again, the issue is we at Sumo Logic want to protect you. We don't want to move you from one environment to another environment without your blessing, without your permission. Okay. Now, when you click on this button, I noticed yesterday in class that some folks were actually seeing that pop-up occur right here. Okay. If they didn't get the pop-up right here, we had to send them down to help to do that. So let's see what kind of questions we got in here. Okay. Andrew asked a really good question. What if my company does not have a Sumo Logic domain? Okay. That's real easy. It's an easy fix for me. What I'm going to do is there's a way that you can sign up for a Sumo Logic account. And so if you don't mind, I will give you this lovely URL and you can sign up for a free demo account. So if your company does not have a Sumo account, or you don't have a Sumo account, if your company has an account and you don't have one, I suggest you talk to your administrator about setting you up. Okay. But if you don't, you can always create a trial account. So Andrew, I believe that answers your question. You should be good to go. Now, David says I'm getting a verification error. Right, Dave. That verification error should be in the form of a pop-up window, which has a button that you should be able to click on. David, you raised your hand. What's your question, sir? Feel free to ask.
Hello, I'm the same guy that said verification error.
Okay.
It opened a window and it says Sumo Logic verification error. Unfortunately, the link didn't work as planned. It's
Okay.
expired or invalid.
Okay.
Please email Sumo Logic support.
Okay, then in that case, you're going to have to reach out to Sumo Logic support. Maybe there's something wrong with your account or whatever, but I would reach out to support. Again, you can send an email to support@sumologic.com, send them that screen capture, and they should be able to walk you through that.
Okay.
Don't know
Thank you.
why, but lots of different reasons it could be. All right. So again, ladies and gentlemen, you click on the house, you click on certification, you click on get certified, and it should take us into our learning management system. Here in our learning management system, to get certified, you're going to click on this get certified area. This, by the way, is our learning management system, our LMS. Here are all of our exams. And the exam that you want, I believe, is the administration exam. Now, before I go into this administration exam, I want to point something out to you. Don't click, just watch along for a second. Up here in the upper right-hand corner is your profile, right? You're logged in. If you click on it in your profile, you can see all the exams you've completed, when they were completed, when they expire, all of that good stuff. You can view your certificates. You can also click on this to add that information to your LinkedIn profile. It'll add that certification to your LinkedIn profile under certifications. Okay. So the point is that when you complete the exam, this is where you'll be able to see the results of that exam. This is where you can take that exam, you can view its certificate, do a screen capture of this, email training-promotions@sumologic.com, and I'll put that in the chat box, so don't worry. And you can say, hey, can I please have my $15 Uber Eats voucher? So this is how we make that happen. All right. If I scroll down from here, there's a done button that's going to take me back out of here. Now, as far as taking the administration exam, like I said, you click on the administration exam tile, you register, registration's instantaneous, you click on it, I'm registered, ready to go. Says here before you start, you click on that, you got 30 questions, you got 60 minutes to complete, passing score is 75. This is an open book, open note, open slide exam. In fact, you get stuck on this exam, ask me or Odell. We'll gladly try to help you, okay? All right, we're here to help. When you click next, it will actually take you to the exam, the start of the exam. You'll see you've got a 60-minute counter right there. As I either click start assessment or as I start scrolling down and seeing questions, my counter starts, excuse me. So I've got 59 minutes and 50 seconds. All right, which of the following is not an available host metric category? Users, okay? CPU, network, memory, those are valid. When setting up user roles, an administrator can change which role can manage collectors, which roles can only view collectors. That is true. I've answered a couple of these and I want to show you why I answered them. I'm going to click and scroll to the bottom. I've only answered 2 questions, so there's no way in heck I passed. When I get done with this and I say submit all answers, it's going to grade it. And here on the grading screen, it tells me what questions I got right. It tells me what questions I got wrong. I have no idea why I got the questions wrong. I just know I got them wrong. Most importantly, when you pass with a 75 or better, make sure you click close course. Because when you click close course, that's going to write this to your profile. If you don't click close course, it's not going to write it to your profile. It's as though you didn't take the exam. And we want to make sure you get credit for passing the exam. Now, first question is always asked, do I need to take this right now? John, I got meetings and stuff. No, you can take it anytime you want to. You don't have to do it right now. You can take it anytime you want to if you got things coming up. Second of all, if I fail the exam, when can I take it again? Anytime you want to. You can take it immediately again if you want to, but it's up to you. You can take it immediately again. There's no action required by me or Adele for you to take this exam again. Are there any other questions, ladies and gentlemen, that you might have about the exam? I'm going to turn on my camera so I can properly say goodbye. Again, if you've got questions, feel free to let me know. Hang on a second. I see someone get their hand up. David, do you still have that question, or your hand's still up? Can I lower it? Okay, good. Again, I want to thank you all for attending. I hope you got the answers to your questions. If there's anything we can do to help you, please don't hesitate to let us know. Otherwise, I hope to see you in the class again real soon. And I want to thank you all for attending. That's it. You guys take your exams. And again, if you're done with the exam, feel free to sign out, log out of Zoom. Have yourselves a wonderful day. Please be safe. Thanks a lot.